Just was watching Planet of the Apes, and I'm going to express my interpretation of what was going on in the film. I'm not 100% confident, obviously, but I feel relatively confident that the way I'm going to present this is roughly accurate. So, in the film, we have the main character who is genuinely a good guy. He's trying to cure his father of Alzheimer's. He's a scientist and a smart one. Although it does make the point of saying that he doesn't have very good sort of social relations. That's not even true because he has a girlfriend, but I guess he's ignorant of the money power sort of, and that's sort of made clear by his boss, who says, you just don't understand money and so forth. And in the end, he does quit the company because he can see that it's sort of doing unethical things, but he goes pretty far along with them. But I think it's mostly because he's just ignorant. Anyways, that's sort of a side issue. It's an exciting film, interesting to watch. He designs this drug that's used on his father to help cure his father's Alzheimer's, and it works effectively. His father has a bounce back from it. I kind of have to spoil it to give a synopsis of my interpretation, so if you want to watch the film first, or you don't want the film spoiled, then probably don't watch this. So his father has Alzheimer's, and he's trying to use this drug to solve his Alzheimer's, and it works effectively. He actually becomes more intelligent, although that's not conclusive, but he is it seems more intelligent in the end. The chimps that he's using it on also develop higher the initial test only shows one chimp that has higher cognitive development and is killed because she gets out of line and sort of destroys the initial projects outlined by running into a meeting. Although she has a baby, and that baby has the same genes and doesn't need to be given a regular treatment. This baby is held by the main character for many years in his home and grows up very, very intelligent. But then a fight happens and he gets put into a cage in a holding pen. There he develops relationships and so forth with other apes and wants them to become smart eventually. My interpretation of the apes, I will continue the story in a minute, but my interpretation of the apes themselves are super soldiers, I think. Again, if you believe that movies create predictive programming, what predictive programming essentially is the movie industry presents us with information of what they want to do in the future, and by they I mean certain government establishments, through Hollywood. And I would say it's been really amped up in the last number of years, in so far as there's been a broad awakening about what's going on, sort of. And so they have to push these programs through faster, which means they have to get the information into your head as possibilities, in a sense. And so that's what they're doing with the predictive programming. And so there's been super soldier programs for many years. I think they're on about Generation 7. Remember that programs like this can be kept under wraps quite well. Manhattan Project is one of the better examples, where it had over 100,000 people employed during World War II, and very, very little information leaked out. Nobody knew about the creation of the atomic bomb, despite the fact that 100,000 people were indirectly working on it. So if you have only a couple hundred super soldiers that have been quite massively psychologically treated, in the sense that they don't even know their own, they have split personality disorder and the like, massively intelligent in certain areas, quite unintelligent in other areas, and this has been programmed intentionally that way. So what I'm seeing, this is being programmed, is these apes are like that. They are the super soldiers. In a sense, they're underhuman because they, you know, in this presentation, they're physiologically sort of underhuman. But at the same time, they're also sort of physiologically higher than human because their intelligence in the end becomes greater than humans, although they can just barely speak. The suggestion is that the youngest ape, anyway, is smarter than a 3 and 4 year old at his age when he was 3 and 4 years old. So these are super intelligent beings, in other words. The side effects of the drug, we later find out, especially the later development of the drug, the initial development seems positive, as the initial results were good, but the next generation of the drug seemed to actually kill humans. We don't find out till the very, very end of the film that this drug was spread all over the world just at the last moment of the film. It really has no plot linearity, which is absurd when the history of film is to be very much tying every piece of data in together, although there is maybe some small amount of connectivity with that fact. But it's the only place you could argue would be that point you could argue for it would be that they're trying to make a point about the negative effects of these sorts of drugs and the possible consequences, which is potentially plausible. And on the other side, they're saying, however, that, you know, look at the effects in this sense. You know, you got these super intelligent beings that were not as intelligent before. They have greater freedom. I'm all for paradox and convolution, and that might be what they're doing, but it's, given the history of programming, and this is a long story, which I won't fully get into unless you're interested, I think that's more or less what they are trying to do. They're trying to say, you know, this vaccine, this drug that is supposed to help people, especially with higher cognitive capacities, might become viral, spread around the world, and kill many, many people. And it wouldn't have to be just that particular drug. I think it's just saying vaccines in general. We've had many scares with, you know, the swine flu and so forth. It gets your mind thinking about that potential as though it is possible, and it is, don't get me wrong. They usually play off of potentials, and that makes it all the more difficult to distinguish between what is actually just a natural occurring phenomenon and what is not. And again, I'm not saying this is necessarily the right interpretation, but this is what I'm riffing on. I feel generally more confident than not that that's what's going on. So you have super soldiers that do in the end survive. They have really no allegiances, it seems, to really anybody. You might argue that, you know, in reality, those super soldiers, because they have their minds sort of split, their personality split, then on the face of it, they might not look like they have any allegiances, but the programming is so strong that you just need cues, and they will do as they are programmed, in a sense. Often it's weird though, right? This is all hypnosis that takes place, and it's been shown that typically a person will not go against their moral character. However, if they're pushed near death, then and only then will they do that. They'll break what they would morally stand for, kind of a barrier, and then they can go and murder people without consciousness of, or rather, felt sense anguish about what they're doing. The chimps are actually expressed, especially the main chimp shows emotion that he actually doesn't want these people killed. Although a few of them he does in the end. Somewhat accidentally, but somewhat not, especially the main Genesis guy. So, I mean, that's where I stand on that. Be well.